For centuries, Earth's greatest civilizations had kept a secret, one passed down from generation to generation. It was an ancient prophecy, written long before any of the modern nations had been born. This prophecy spoke of a time when humanity, pushed to its limits, would rise to become the most powerful force in the universe. But there was a warning. If anyone dared to provoke humanity, the consequences would be unimaginable. Many dismiss the prophecy as a mere legend, nothing more than stories passed around campfires in old villages. But as the years went by, the elders of the world, the wise, mysterious figures who seemed to know everything, kept the prophecy close. They knew the truth. They knew it wasn't just a story. It wasn't until the year 2055 that the first sign of the prophecy's truth appeared. The world was on edge. Climate change had ravaged many countries, and wars between nations had reached a boiling point. The fragile peace that remained on Earth was about to break. At that moment, strange events began happening all over the world. People noticed strange patterns in the sky, lightning storms with colors no one had ever seen before. Whispers spread of objects moving in space, too fast for any human technology to match. Some thought they were just natural occurrences, but deep down, a fear began to grow. Then, one morning, the first message came. It wasn't like anything humanity had ever received before. It wasn't from another nation or a neighboring satellite. It was a signal from deep space, a signal so powerful and clear that it stopped everyone in their tracks. The signal was not just a series of beeps or static. It was intelligent, deliberate, and loud enough to be heard by every communication system on Earth. The message was simple. Prepare. The world's leaders were stunned. Governments scrambled to decode the message, sending their brightest minds into action. At first, many thought it was a hoax, maybe even some kind of elaborate test. But as days passed, the signal did not stop. It was clear that someone or something was trying to reach Earth. The signal came with no explanation, no details about the sender. Who were they? What did they want? Why were they sending such a chilling message? But the message was not the only thing to worry about. People across the world began noticing strange phenomena. Technology began to malfunction, then stop altogether. Satellites started going offline one by one, and GPS systems no longer worked. The world felt different, as if it was being watched, waiting for something to happen. While governments tried to keep calm and maintain control, the common people started to panic. What was happening? Was this the beginning of the end? Meanwhile, in a small, quiet village far from any major city, an old man named Elder Tobias stood in front of a crackling fire. His hands were weathered from years of work, but his eyes held a wisdom that most people could never understand. He had known about the prophecy for his entire life. His ancestors had passed it down to him, and now it was his turn to share it. But there was no one left who truly listened, except for one young man named Elijah. Elijah had always been curious, asking questions about the ancient world, the elders, and the stories of old. He had grown up listening to Tobias, who had taught him everything he knew. But today, as the signals echoed through the air, Tobias knew something had changed. It was time for Elijah to learn the truth. Elijah, Tobias said, his voice low but firm, this is a moment we've all been waiting for. The prophecy is real. Humanity is about to face a choice, one that could decide the future of the world. Elijah looked at him, confused. What are you saying, Tobias? What choice? What prophecy? Tobias took a deep breath and nodded toward the horizon, where dark clouds were beginning to form, though no storm had been forecasted. You've heard of the ancient prophecy, haven't you? The one that speaks of a time when humanity will rise against those who dare to challenge us. The one where the world will change forever. Elijah nodded slowly, remembering the stories his grandmother had told him as a child. I remember, but those are just stories, aren't they? They were never just stories, Elijah. They were a warning. The elders had been preparing for this moment for centuries. And now, the time has come. As the old man spoke, Elijah felt a chill run through him. It wasn't just a cold wind that had started to pick up. It was something deeper, something unsettling. He could feel that everything was changing, that something big was about to happen. The sky grew darker as the signal continued, each pulse stronger than the last. It felt as if the earth itself was trembling in anticipation. And in that moment, Elijah realized that Tobias was right. The world was on the brink of something far beyond what anyone could understand. Something that would force humanity to make a choice, fight for their survival, or risk losing everything. But who were they fighting against? And what did the prophecy truly mean for the future of humanity? As Elijah looked up at the sky, he knew one thing for sure: the world would never be the same again. The days following the strange signal felt like an endless stretch of uncertainty. Governments around the world scrambled to understand what was happening, and yet no answers came. Every scientist, every researcher, every leader who once believed they understood the limits of the universe now stood in the shadow of something far beyond their comprehension. And then, the impossible happened. One cold, clear morning, the sky trembled. At first, it was only a small anomaly, something faint, a flicker, like a star blinking in and out of existence. But soon, the flicker grew, becoming brighter, more intense. And then, as quickly as it had started, a massive shape appeared in the sky. The world's major city froze in fear as something enormous and dark blotted out the sun. The alien ships, dozens of them, had arrived. They were unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. Massive, geometric shapes that seemed to distort the very air around them, their surfaces smooth and shimmering like liquid metal. Each one was larger than any skyscraper, hovering motionlessly in the atmosphere, casting long, dark shadows over the earth below. There was no sound, just the unsettling, oppressive presence of these machines that seemed to defy all logic. The world held its breath. The governments issued warnings, and people rushed to shelters. But the ships did not descend. They did not attack. They merely hovered, waiting. Then, as if responding to some unspoken command, the ships began to align themselves, forming a perfect circle in the sky. The movement was deliberate, almost ritualistic, as though they were presenting themselves to humanity. And then, out of the silence, came a voice. It was a voice unlike any human voice. It did not come from the air or the radio. It came from everywhere, filling the minds of everyone who listened, echoing inside their thoughts. There was no language, no words, only intent. But the message was clear. We have waited for this moment. The voice was cold, distant, but there was something else, something hidden behind the chill. A quiet, almost unbearable weight that pressed down on everyone who heard it. This was no mere announcement. This was a declaration. Humanity was being watched. But more than that, humanity was being tested. The governments tried to respond, but no words could reach the alien ships. Every attempt at communication failed. And then, the ships began to move. Slowly at first, like giants waking from a deep slumber, they began to glide across the sky. Their movements were graceful, but they left behind a trail of power, a magnetic force that seemed to bend the very air around them. It was as if they were drawing the world into their orbit. A wave of panic spread across the globe as people began to realize that the aliens were not here to negotiate. They were here to make a demand. The next day, Earth's leaders received a transmission. It was a message sent through every form of communication humanity possessed: television, radio, the internet. It was a direct transmission, unfiltered by any government or military. The voice returned, colder and more direct this time. You have one choice. Submit to us, or be erased. The message was simple, yet its implications were devastating. Earth had no allies, no backup. The alien fleet was vast, their technology light years ahead of anything humanity had ever imagined. The world's leaders tried to come together, forming an emergency summit, but all they could do was watch the ships hovering overhead, waiting. As tensions ran high, something unexpected happened. A single human figure stood before the alien ships, a silhouette against the bright sky. It was Elijah, the young man who had heard the prophecy from Tobias. He stood alone, on a quiet street, looking up at the alien ships. No one knew why he had stepped forward, why he had done this without warning. But as the world watched, a strange light appeared in the sky, illuminating Elijah. In that moment, the air seemed to hum with energy, a pulse that rippled through the city. And then, the voice spoke again, this time with a slight tremor in its tone. You, human, you are not what we expected. The world fell into chaos as the alien ships began to descend. But Elijah stood firm. He wasn't afraid. For reasons even he couldn't explain, He felt a strange power coursing through him, a power he had never known before. It was as if the very earth was responding to his presence, as though it had chosen him for something greater. The ship stopped. The world stopped. And then the alien spoke one final time. "We will wait. The world will decide." And with that, the ships vanished into the sky, leaving behind only the trembling silence of a world forever changed. The waiting game had begun. The aliens had made their move, but humanity had shown that they were not so easily intimidated. Elijah knew this was just the beginning. The prophecy was unfolding, and the choice that humanity would have to make was coming soon. There was no going back now. The silence after the alien's sudden departure was unbearable. The world watched with bated breath, waiting for the next move. What were the aliens planning? Why had they focused on Elijah? The message, "We will wait. The world will decide," echoed in everyone's minds, leaving a sense of dread hanging over the planet. In the days that followed, the Earth's governments were in a frenzy. Leaders called for immediate action, but no one knew what action could be taken. The alien ships still hovered high above, their presence casting a shadow on the world below. Every attempt to communicate with them failed. Earth's best scientists and diplomats could only watch as the ships remained silent, unmoving. Meanwhile, Elijah was under intense scrutiny. News outlets and governments sought him out, desperate for answers. How had he been chosen? What did the aliens mean when they said, "You are not what we expected"? No one knew, but Elijah felt something stirring within him, something he couldn't fully explain. He was no longer just a bystander in this monumental moment. He had become a symbol, a living puzzle that needed to be solved. But even as the world's most brilliant minds studied him, he felt an unsettling power growing inside him, as if the very earth itself was speaking to him. The pressure was mounting, and Elijah felt it every day. His once quiet life was gone, replaced by endless interviews, questions, and the constant buzz of global attention. But in the midst of all this, Elijah started to notice something strange. The world around him seemed to respond to his emotions. When he felt calm, the air was still, almost peaceful. But when fear or doubt crept in, the world seemed to tremble. Cars stalled, lights flickered, and the ground beneath him would hum with energy. It was like he was connected to something much larger than himself. The earth was alive, and somehow it was responding to him. As his power grew, so did the fear. People began to wonder, was Elijah their salvation, or their doom? The prophecy had always spoken of humanity's great power, but could it really be true? Were they being tested by a higher force, or were the aliens simply using Elijah to manipulate the human race? In an emergency summit convened by the United Nations, the world's leaders gathered to discuss their next steps. It was clear that they had no choice but to act quickly. The alien ships were not leaving. The aliens had made their offer, submit to us or be erased. But could humanity trust them? Could they submit to beings who had shown no sign of goodwill? The debate raged on. Some nations, driven by fear, called for immediate surrender. Their reasoning was simple. The aliens had superior technology, and fighting back could mean certain destruction. But others, led by a growing faction of rebel groups and military leaders, refused to bow down. They saw the aliens as invaders, no different from any other force that had tried to conquer the Earth. If humanity was to survive, it would do so on its own terms. But then, as if the universe itself had been listening, something extraordinary happened. Elijah was walking through a crowded city square when a strange force swept through the air. The crowd paused, sensing something was wrong. The ground vibrated beneath their feet, and the air became heavy, thick with energy. Elijah could feel it. The earth was waking up. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the intensity of the force. For a moment, everything around him went silent. Then, without warning, a vision flooded his mind, a vision of a vast, ancient power hidden deep within the earth. It was a force older than humanity, older than the stars. And it was waiting. Elijah's body shook as the vision took hold of him. The message was clear. The time has come. Choose. He struggled to stand, his mind racing with questions. What did it mean? What choice was he supposed to make? As the vision faded, he realized that the answer was not one he could make alone. The world needed to make this decision. The choice wasn't just about whether to fight or surrender. It was about whether humanity was ready to accept the power within them. If they accepted the power, they would no longer be the same. But if they rejected it, there would be nothing more than a weak species, easily crushed by forces greater than themselves. Elijah had always been an ordinary man. He had never asked for this power, never wanted to be the key to humanity's future. But now, as he looked out at the crowd that had gathered around him, he realized something profound. He was humanity's last hope. It wasn't just about the aliens or the technology they had. It was about humanity's will to survive and rise above. The world was watching him. Every decision he made would ripple across history. He had become the symbol of humanity's strength and its deepest fears. The pressure was immense. But as he looked up at the ships hovering above, he knew one thing for sure. The choice was coming, and soon the world would have to decide whether it was ready to fight back or accept its fate. The world's leaders were paralyzed, caught between two overwhelming choices. On one side, there were those who still advocated for surrender. Their reasoning was simple. The alien ships were untouchable, their technology far beyond anything humanity could comprehend. If they fought back, the consequences could be catastrophic. It was better to submit, to join the aliens and perhaps gain access to their knowledge. After all, they had been offered peace, albeit with the cost of submission. The chance of survival was too great to ignore. On the other side, a growing resistance began to take shape, led by those who refused to give in. They saw the aliens for what they were, invaders, conquerors who had no intention of offering humanity anything but servitude. This side rallied around the idea that humanity's strength lay in their will to fight back, to refuse to kneel, even against the most terrifying odds. There were whispers of a hidden weapon, of a power buried beneath the earth itself, one that had been kept secret for centuries. But no one knew its true nature, or even if it still existed. Amidst the chaos, Elijah's life had become even more tumultuous. Every day brought new revelations, new forces pulling him in different directions. He had become the center of attention, not just because of his strained connection to the earth's power, but because of the prophecy that seemed to be unfolding through him. The elders, who had once kept their secrets hidden, were now speaking openly to him, guiding him towards an unknown destiny. But their guidance came with cryptic warnings. One evening, as Elijah sat alone in a small, dimly lit room, the voice of Tobias, the elder who had first spoken of the prophecy, whispered in his mind. It was more than a message. It was a call to action. The earth is not just alive, Elijah. It is a weapon, and you are the key to unlocking it. The word sent a shiver through Elijah. He had always known there was something deeper, something unspoken that connected him to the earth, but hearing it so plainly made it real. The earth itself had power, an ancient, unimaginable force, and it had been waiting for humanity to awaken it. But why? What was the true purpose of this power? And why had it chosen him, of all people, to bear this responsibility? The voice continued, "You must seek the chamber of the ancients. It is hidden beneath the surface, deep within the earth. There you will find the truth. But be warned, those who seek it are not always prepared for what they will discover." The message was clear, but it only raised more questions. What was this chamber? And why had it been hidden? What kind of power lay within? And how could it be used? Elijah's thoughts were interrupted when a loud knock came at the door. He opened it to find a small group of resistance leaders standing before him. They had come to speak with him. He was their last hope. The alien threat was growing stronger, and they believed Elijah might hold the key to humanity's survival. "We need you, Elijah," said a woman named Captain Renner, a sharp-minded strategist who had helped lead many of the resistance movements. "We have found the location of the Chamber of the Ancients. We believe it's buried beneath an old military base in the Pacific. The question is, do you trust us enough to go there? Time is running out." Elijah looked at her, his mind racing. The chamber, this was it. The place he had been called to, where he would uncover the truth. But what would he find there? The answers, or more questions? And what would the consequences be of unleashing whatever power lay hidden in the earth? "I have no choice," Elijah said quietly, his voice steady but filled with a new resolve. "If this is what I'm meant to do, then I'll go. But we must be careful. I've seen the dangers of this power. It's not something we can control easily." Renner nodded, her face grim. "We know, but it's the only chance we have left." As Elijah prepared for the journey, the pressure of the moment weighed heavily on him. The resistance had no idea what awaited them beneath the earth. The technology hidden there could change everything, but it could also destroy them. Was humanity truly ready for this power? Was Elijah ready for it? The day of departure arrived, and Elijah stood at the head of a small, elite team of resistance fighters, including Renner, a geologist named Dr. Sorn, and a former military officer, Captain Yerrick. They boarded an A-craft, their destination set for a forgotten military base in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The flight was long and filled with unease. No one spoke much. They all knew that what lay ahead was a turning point. They could find the power to defeat the aliens, or they could unleash something far worse. As the A-craft neared the base, Elijah felt a strange pull within him. It was as if the earth itself was calling to him, urging him forward. He was no longer just a man caught in the middle of a global crisis. He was part of something much greater, a force that had been waiting for this very moment. They landed near the base, and the team made their way through the dense jungle, guided only by a set of ancient coordinates. The tension was palpable, and every step felt like they were crossing into unknown territory that would either save or doom humanity. They reached the entrance to a hidden underground bunker, a door long forgotten by the world above. As they entered, the air grew colder, and the lights flickered. The path ahead was dark, but Elijah knew they had to continue. There was no turning back now. Suddenly, they came upon a massive chamber, its walls covered in intricate symbols and markings. At the center, a glowing pedestal rose from the floor. It pulsed with energy, the very air vibrating with power. Elijah stepped forward, drawn to the pedestal as if it held the answers to everything. But as his hand touched the pedestal, a deep rumble echoed through the chamber. The walls began to shift, and the ground cracked open, revealing a hidden force far greater than anything they had imagined. In that moment, Elijah realized that unlocking this power would not just change the fate of humanity, it would reshape the very essence of existence itself. The air in the chamber was thick with tension as Elijah's fingers hovered over the glowing pedestal. He could feel its pulse against his skin, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The chamber seemed to hum with ancient energy, the walls now vibrating as if they were alive. His mind raced. What had they stumbled upon? The symbols on the walls were unlike anything humanity had seen before, ancient script that seemed to shift before his eyes, changing with every blink. This wasn't just a hidden military base. It was a place of unimaginable significance, and the secrets it held could determine the future of the world. The team was silent, each of them absorbed in the same awe and fear. Dr. Sorn, the geologist, carefully studied the markings on the walls, his eyes wide with disbelief. "These symbols," he muttered, "they are not just ancient. They are like instructions, guiding us to something or warning us about it." Elijah's heart pounded in his chest. He had always known that the earth held hidden power, but he had never imagined it was this vast. This dangerous. "Elijah, don't," Renner cautioned, her voice low and tense. She had been watching him closely, sensing his growing connection to the pedestal. "We don't know what this is. We don't know what will happen if you trigger it." But Elijah couldn't stop himself. It was as if something inside him was calling him forward, urging him to unlock whatever lay within. He knew they couldn't turn back now. They had come too far, and humanity's fate was tied to whatever secret the earth had been hiding for centuries. With a deep breath, he reached out and touched the pedestal. The moment his hand made contact, the ground shook violently. The walls of the chamber cracked open, revealing a hidden passage beneath the pedestal. A cold wind rushed through the chamber, and the very air seemed to shimmer with energy. Something ancient and powerful was awakening. As the dust settled, Elijah's eyes widened in disbelief. Below the pedestal was a massive, circular structure, half buried in the earth. It was a weapon unlike anything the world had ever seen. Its surface was smooth, but it glowed with an eerie, pulsating light, as though it had been dormant for millennia. It was built from an unknown material, stronger than steel and lighter than air. It was a fusion of technology and something far more mysterious, something that felt alive. This is what the prophecy was speaking about, Elijah whispered. The weapon that could change everything. Renner stepped forward, eyes narrowing as she examined the structure. "It's not just a weapon," she said slowly. This is a device that could control the entire planet. It's not meant to be used in battle. It's meant to reshape the world itself. Elijah felt a chill run down his spine. The realization hit him like a blow. They hadn't just discovered a weapon. They had uncovered a tool that could alter the very fabric of the earth. The earth itself could be manipulated, controlled. If used incorrectly, it could cause untold destruction. But if wielded with precision, it could allow humanity to reshape the world in ways they had never imagined. But there was a catch. Dr. Sorn, who had been studying the intricate patterns around the base of the structure, suddenly stiffened. This device, it's not just about control. It's a key to something far greater. Elijah's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Sorn stepped back, his voice trembling. The key to a gateway, a portal. A deep silence filled the room. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. A portal? To where? As if in response to the question, the pedestal's glow intensified, and the ground beneath them began to rumble once more. The walls seemed to shift, revealing a hidden chamber deep within the structure. It was large, too large for a human-made installation. As the team moved forward, they saw it. A massive stone doorway, ancient and cracked, its surface covered in the same shifting symbols they had seen earlier. It was a gateway, a portal to another world. The realization struck Elijah hard. The earth wasn't just a powerful weapon, it was a bridge to something beyond, and it had been waiting for humanity to find it. As Elijah approached the stone doorway, the air around him thickened, charged with energy. His hand, trembling slightly, hovered over the ancient symbols carved into the door. The power in the chamber was growing, reacting to him, as if it recognized him, chosen, or perhaps fated, to unlock what lay beyond. Elijah, stop! Rena cried, grabbing his arm. We don't know what's on the other side. You can't open it without knowing the consequences. But Elijah's resolve hardened. He had to know. The earth had been waiting for this moment, and so had he. If humanity was to survive, they had to understand what lay beyond the portal. They had to face whatever challenge was on the other side, because there was no going back now. With a steady breath, Elijah placed his hand on the door. The symbols flared brightly, and the ground beneath them trembled again. The stone door began to creak open, revealing a swirling vortex of light and shadow. Elijah stepped forward, feeling the energy pulling him toward the portal. We don't have a choice. We have to see what's on the other side. As the team followed him, the world around them began to change. The very air seemed to hum with anticipation. They were on the brink of discovering something that would forever alter the course of history. But with the opening of the portal came a new question. What was waiting on the other side? The swirling vortex of light in front of Elijah pulsed with an almost hypnotic rhythm. It was not just a portal. It was an invitation, or perhaps a challenge. The air around it hummed with power, and Elijah could feel the weight of destiny pressing on his chest. Every instinct in his body screamed to step forward, to cross through and discover what lay beyond. The earth had given him a glimpse of its power, its ancient secrets, and now it was time to unlock them. But as Elijah reached for the vortex, something unexpected happened. A voice, low and urgent, echoed in his mind. It was Rena's voice, but not like he had ever heard it before. Elijah, you don't know what you're doing. He froze, her words slicing through the haze of his determination. Looking back at her, he saw fear in her eyes. She wasn't just worried for the mission, or the world. She was scared for him. There was something deeper in her gaze, something she hadn't said yet. Something important. Rena, Elijah said softly, his hand hovering inches from the portal. What are you not telling me? Rena looked away for a moment, then stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't part of this mission by accident. Elijah, I wasn't just chosen for my skills or my leadership. I'm here because I know what this device truly is, and I've known all along what it could do. Elijah's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What's going on? Rena took a deep breath. The portal, it's not just a bridge to another world. It's a door to something far more dangerous. Something that humanity was never meant to know. The weapon, it's not just power. It's a beacon, a signal that will reach out beyond our world, calling to others, to those who will come to claim us. Elijah felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Claim us? You mean, we're not the only ones? Rena's expression darkened. No, Elijah. The aliens we've been fighting against, they were only the beginning. The truth is far worse. The Earth has always been the key, and it's not just for saving humanity. It's a beacon for other forces. Forces are far beyond anything we can understand. The portal is a signal, a call to arms. Elijah stepped back from the vortex, his mind racing. So the prophecy, the power within the Earth, it wasn't just about us. It was always about drawing in more. But why didn't you tell me this earlier? Rena's face was etched with regret. Because I didn't want you to know. I wanted to believe we could control it, that we could use the power for good. But the moment you activated the pedestal, we cross a line. The forces it's calling, they're not just coming from the stars. They've always been here. They've been waiting for us to open the door. The truth hit Elijah like a punch to the gut. The aliens they had fought, the ships hovering over Earth, they had only been the first wave. The Earth was not just a weapon. It was a trap, a lure meant to attract greater, more terrifying forces. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. It was bait in a much larger game. Rena continued, her voice steady but tinged with sorrow. There are those who have been watching us for millennia. They don't care about humanity or Earth. They care about what we can give them, the power that lies within our planet. We were never meant to hold this power. If we unlock it fully, we'll bring about our own destruction. And I helped make it possible. Elijah stared at her in disbelief. You knew about this? And you never said a word. She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. I didn't want to believe it. But now, we don't have a choice. The portal is calling them. And once they come, we won't be able to stop them. The room seemed to tilt as Elijah processed the weight of her words. They had awoken something far worse than they had ever imagined. The prophecy wasn't just a warning. It was a countdown to the arrival of forces too powerful for humanity to face. Suddenly, the ground shook. The chamber seemed to come alive, the walls vibrating as if in response to Rena's revelation. The air around the portal crackled with energy, and Elijah could feel the pressure building, the overwhelming sense that something far greater than them was preparing to enter. We have to stop it, Elijah said urgently, turning to the others. We have to close the portal, now. But just as he moved to retreat, a blinding light filled the chamber. The portal pulsed violently, and the stone doorway seemed to rip open wider, as though the earth itself was resisting their attempt to shut it down. A cold, bone-chilling wind swept through the room, and shadows began to form at the edges of the vortex. Dark shapes, too large to be anything human, started to emerge. A voice echoed through the chamber, not from the portal, but from deep within the earth itself. It was deep, guttural, and full of ancient malice. It's too late, Elijah. Elijah's heart sank. The voice wasn't just from the portal. It was inside him, inside them all. It was a presence that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. The chamber began to tremble more violently, and Elijah could feel the walls closing in, the ground beneath him splitting open. The power that had once felt like a gift now felt like a curse, a force that had been unleashed far too soon. Rena stepped forward, her eyes wide with fear. We were wrong. The earth isn't just a weapon, it's a prison. And now, we've opened it. Elijah realized the terrible truth in her words. The earth was not merely a weapon, a tool for control. It was a prison for an ancient, unspeakable force. And now, they had set it free. The ground beneath Elijah's feet trembled as a shadow from the portal began to take form. The air in the chamber grew thick, charged with an energy so intense it felt like a physical weight pressing down on his chest. The dark figures emerging from the vortex were unlike anything he had ever seen, larger than life, their forms shifting and twisting, as though they were both physical and ethereal at the same time. Their presence was overwhelming, suffocating. Rena stepped back, her face pale with fear. It's them, she whispered. The beings the earth was keeping locked away. The ones who had been waiting for centuries. Elijah could hardly breathe, the weight of their arrival crushing him. They had known it was bad. They had known something ancient and powerful was coming. But nothing could have prepared them for this. The portal continued to pulse with energy, opening wider, as if inviting the shadowy figures through. The air hummed with a dark, ancient song, one that resonated deep within the earth itself, as though the planet was singing a mournful tune, a tune of surrender. And then the voice came again. This time, it was clearer, louder, and filled with a terrifying clarity. Humanity, your reckoning has come. You have awakened us from our slumber. Now, you will bow before us or face the consequences of your actions. The voice reverberated in Elijah's mind, and for the briefest moment, he felt an overwhelming pull to submit. It was as if the earth itself was calling him to surrender, to give in to the ancient force. But something inside him resisted. The strength he had drawn from the earth, the power he had tapped into, wasn't meant to destroy or control. It was meant to protect. He turned to the team, his voice hoarse but resolute. We can't give in. We can't let them take over. The earth, it's not their prison, it's our home. Renner looked at him with wide eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. But Elijah, we're outmatched. They've been waiting for this moment for centuries. We're nothing compared to them. You saw the power they wield. They're not like the aliens we fought. These beings, these ancient gods, are beyond anything humanity could ever hope to face. Elijah's mind raced. He could feel the earth, feel the energy coursing beneath the surface, but it was no longer just a weapon. It was part of him, part of the fight. And if the earth could resist them, so could he. We don't need to defeat them, Elijah said, his voice growing stronger. We need to stop them from getting what they came for. This portal, this power, it's not just their key to victory. It's their undoing. The chamber quaked as the ancient figures began to fully emerge from the portal, their massive, shifting forms stepping into the light. Their eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed with an unnatural light, an eerie, terrifying radiance that pierced the darkness. Elijah stepped forward, his hand instinctively reaching for the pedestal once more. The power inside him surged, as if the earth was lending him its strength, guiding him. The knowledge that had been hidden for millennia flooded his mind. The truth behind the prophecy, the truth behind the earth's power. The earth had always known that these beings would return. That's why it had kept the power hidden, why it had been dormant for so long. It had been waiting for humanity to awaken it, to become worthy of a challenge. It had given them the power not to conquer, but to stand against the forces that would seek to destroy them. Elijah, no! Renner cried, but it was too late. He pressed his hand to the pedestal, and in that instant, the chamber erupted with light. A brilliant, blinding light that filled every corner, every crevice, and washed over everything in its path. The ground shook violently, and the energy swirling around the portal began to crack and shatter. The figures from the other side shrieked, their forms flickering and distorting as if the very fabric of reality was bending against them. The ancient beings recoiled, their forms flickering, torn between the desire to enter this world and the force keeping them back. The portal, once a bridge to their realm, began to collapse, its edges burning away, consuming itself from within. But the figures fought to hold on. You cannot stop us, the voice thundered, now a guttural roar. We are eternal. We are beyond your understanding. Elijah's mind screamed in agony, but he held firm. He knew this was their only chance. The earth was rejecting the portal, pushing back the ancient forces that had once held dominion over it. The weapon, this power, was not for control. It was for survival. With one final, desperate cry, Elijah poured everything he had into the pedestal. The light exploded outward, engulfing the chamber in a wave of pure energy. And then, silence. The chamber fell still, the tremors fading into nothing. Elijah collapsed to the ground, his strength drained, his body battered from the immense power that had flowed through him. But when he opened his eyes, the portal was gone. The ancient beings were gone. The chamber was empty. Renner and the others rushed to him, their faces a mixture of relief and disbelief. We did it, Renner whispered, kneeling beside him. Elijah nodded weakly, the weight of what they had just faced settling on his shoulders. We stopped them, but this isn't over. The earth has shown us what we're capable of. We have to rebuild. We have to learn to wield this power, and we must be ready. There are more threats out there. This was just the beginning. As the team helped him to his feet, Elijah looked around the chamber. The pedestal, now dark and still, seemed like a distant memory. The earth had chosen humanity. But it wasn't just about power. It was about the responsibility that came with it. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge, and for now, it had survived. But as the world outside the chamber began to heal, Elijah knew that this moment, this victory, was only the first step in a much larger journey. The last stand had been won, but the true battle for the future of humanity was just beginning.